Hey guys, it's After Hours. Kind of change things up a little bit. Will, I wanted to ask you, um, the last the sweeping craze in paddle sports right now is fishing boats, um, which I find strange because I was fishing in kayaks. That was how I got into kayaking, and that was 20 years ago, and we did it out of wreck boats. Now you've got these incredibly big, heavy, going for crazy prices with
Fishing
all of the
rigs.
attachments, these rigs, right? And for me, um, I always wonder, is this just the next SUP? Is this something that's going to come in? Everyone's going to be crazy excited about. This is the future, and this is going nowhere. And then 3 years later, just poof. Everyone's got one. It's in the garage. It's over.
I think that based on what I'm seeing in the industry, fishing's here to stay. Fishing's here to stay. And yes, from everything that I see, the fishing category, kayak fishing is right now our strongest growing aspect. There will come a point in time where that will level out, right?
Right, when people who aren't getting out as much are going to start selling, and then suddenly there's going to be a strong used market. You're still ahead of that.
Right. Still ahead of that, but there's still a strong used market. I think that let's look at SUP. SUP came about years ago, let's say a decade ago, but I'm sure just like you, there were people on longboards using a paddle 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I was living on an island in the ocean and kayak surfing ocean waves, and there were dudes on SUP boards, and that was my first introduction. And then and this is before they even had the hand slot, where they were just like, you have to be a big hulking man, and reached all the way to the bottom of the board. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, it's too flat today, so we're just gonna go paddle them around the harbor for a workout and drink our coffee. And then the next year, all of a sudden, they were everywhere, and you were telling me about how they were exploding in the shop. And
I've heard that they used to refer to them as sweepers because they were kind of like
makes sense. You're like sweeping
on the wave. Yeah, so I recall, I don't know if it was 2007, 2008, going to Outdoor Retailer at the time in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I remember there being 74, 80 different stand-up paddleboard manufacturers, just stand-up paddleboard manufacturers at the show. Fast forward to a couple years ago, attending the show, and I don't remember an exact number, but I feel like it was at least half of that. So
you mean at most or at least? Like there was
there
most
may,
40.
There
may
have
40.
been even less than half of that.
And weren't a lot of so there were a ton of brands, right, that were farming out to Asia to get them and then importing them back, but weren't there only a handful of actual manufacturing companies building them for a lot of these larger, these mass producing companies?
Yeah, there were a handful of what's the term?
Actual physical brick and mortar factories.
There were
but
a handful.
There were tons
that's the
of
word
brands.
I was looking for. Thank you. Factories. There were a handful of factories, if not 2 or 3.
Right.
That
were
producing these boards. Now the boards may have been shaped by these different companies, but a lot of them were all produced in a handful of factories.
Right.
In Taiwan, Cobra being one of the big ones. I know that's where Surf Tech came out of. Maybe Boardworks. I know a number of different stand-up paddleboard companies were having their boards produced there.
Which really means it wasn't a windfall to kayak companies at all. It was actually sucking money away from them because they're rotomolding plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like a lot of the excitement this time with fishing has been, hey, this is coming out of our ovens.
We can manufacture this here,
this.
and it makes sense for us to manufacture this here. So that is a very positive thing for kayak fishing that is happening. I think if you look at it, stand-up paddleboarding is just another form of paddling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas kayak fishing is another form of paddling, but it's just using that paddling product for fishing. So when you look at the sport of fishing, that has been around for a long time. I mean, it was a way of life for many people. And you look at these fishermen and the amount of money they spend on bass boats and fish finders, trailers to get those bass boats around, insurance to insure the bass boats, oil to run the bass boat. You look at what they spend there, and a lot of those guys are saying, oh my gosh, I can buy, let's say our average fishing kayak sells for $9.99 or thereabouts, probably more, somewhere upwards of like $11.99. A lot of the premium stuff, if we're not talking pedal drive, I'd say averages around 1,500, pedal drive units around 2,500, and then your basic models more like $7.99. That's kind of the magic number with the new Bite from Jackson Kayaks.
Right.
You've got the Bite at $7.99, the Perception Pescador coming in about the same price point there. But anyways,
and it's bringing people into paddling who
exactly.
who never would have been. I mean, traditionally we're talking aluminum rowboats, fiberglass,
bass boats going off the shore.
Right.
There's all these different ways to fish, and right now, and that's why I say the growth is going to continue, especially in a market like the Northeast. The Southeast, it's bonkers down there right now, and it may be getting close to reaching its saturation point. But here in the Northeast, I still think we have a lot more room to grow as far as kayak fishing is concerned. But we will at some point get to that saturation point. And we'll continue to see those sales, but the growth won't be as extreme as it is right now.
Right. I just wonder what because part of the problem that SUP had was that there's no replacement rate, right? Like the only reason that whitewater kayaking makes sense if you're a manufacturer or whatever is that we break the things at a regular clip, which means we're buying more. And that's something that became an instant problem with SUP. Right. Because like I said, everyone's got one, it's in their garage. It's over. I wonder if the market will continue to innovate and provide something new that will continue to grab people, or if they're just going to sell like individual parts that they broke on their pedal drives, and that'll basically be it. But to that point, what I was going to ask you is one of the things when people started jumping into the SUP market that happened was like you could go to Costco or BJ's and buy a SUP board all of a sudden. It transcended even like big box stores like Dick's or whatever. And then now you kind of see the same thing happening all of a sudden. Like all of these guys are now carrying lower quality fishing boats. And do you think that degrades the opportunities, or like putting out a lesser, Jackson or whoever, they're all looking at putting out cheaper entry level models into the fishing realm? Realistically, is someone going to come back? Is that really going to be an entry, or is that going to be the cul-de-sac? Yeah. Like, are they just, because there's so many accessories and stuff, they can just rivet on whatever they don't want once they actually have that boat? So are they just entering this race into the bottom that I always worry about?
I mean, that's a good question. I really don't think that it's a race to the bottom. Although there are some aspects of paddle sports right now that are a race to the bottom, I don't think fishing is. I think that, while Jackson, for instance, I was just watching the new Jackson Bite intro walkthrough video, and you hear how it's the best thing for you, it's the best boat out there, this is what you want. The one thing that I feel like a lot of these companies don't do is basically just they do a good job telling you this is what you want, this is the latest greatest, this is our new thing. However, they don't do a good job saying, well, we've created this boat to be a price point boat. This is going to be more basic than our other boats. But if you don't have $1,500 to spend on one of our premium boats, this is a good option.
Right.
And that's hard to do when you're introducing a new model. But I think not just Jackson. I'm not calling Jackson out by any stretch.
No, I think everyone will be there very shortly.
Everybody needs to keep in mind, look, just like any industry, we have different price points, and it's not one thing's the best. It should be more, this is going to apply, and folks that are looking for XYZ are going to like this boat, and folks that are looking for ABC are going to like this boat, and that's why we offer these different models. You've got your more basic to your premium, etc. And so as long as folks are focusing on that and can understand the value behind these different price points, because just like any other industry, you get what you pay for. I truly believe that. No, I think that I think that these boats are going to only get folks more fired up. The Pescador, the new Jackson Bite, great boats. You get out there, you paddle those, and then you start to learn, hey, I'm going out there more often. I might need a seat that's more comfortable, or I need a seat that might have more function, more high-low settings, more tracks, more features, so to speak, because I'm taking more gear out, whatever it might be.
Right.
I don't think it's a race to the bottom. I think those, when you're talking $799, I think the major players out there, Jackson, Piranha, Native, Hurricane, Wilderness Systems, they know what they're doing.
Right.
Okay. Now, at the same time, when you go into Costco and you see that $299 fishing rig, I'll tell you what, we sell annually 2,300 boats at the shop, and a lot of fishing boats. And when folks have come and they've test paddled that $299 boat, we hold on to it. They don't leave with it. They leave with the $999 boat. They leave with the $1199 boat. When they have actually sat in it and they paddled it, it makes sense why that boat's $299. And I'll bring up the fact that I think that those $299 boats are hurting the industry. Now, maybe it's starting somebody out. Maybe it's starting them here. I do deal with a lot of people that have bought the $299 boat and are now here to buy the $1,500 boat, or now here to buy the $999 boat. Mm-hmm. But I just am concerned how many people have bought the $299 boat and then just were turned off and didn't use it, and then went and looked at another sport. And so I do think that just like kayak fishing, these uber price point boats, I think that they do more damage than they do good.
I would say, and this is not a scare tactic by any stretch of imagination, but I noticed this year, because I did a little bit of research, every time someone passed away in a kayak accident, I would try and find a photo of the person and or the boat. It was always the cheapo box store boat that people passed away in these flat water
Probably
incidents.
Not wearing a PFD either.
Well, I mean, it doesn't happen to hurt. I mean, they make them 9 feet so they can stack on a pallet and fit vertically inside of a truck, right? Like that's all the priorities are wrong, and that's why how we get there. But I'm more curious about how they're going to figure out the solutions to some of these inherent problems that I see in it as an outsider, which is, okay, you have what's the average weight on one of these boats? Like 90 to 100 pounds pushing on some of the big ones, like the Attack, and that's 97.
That's not the average, but the top end is 120 pounds are some of the models that we stock. But I'd say average is 75 pounds.
So I'm curious to see whereas when I come and I help at Paddle Fest, in the rec scene, all I have to memorize for the weekend, and I have to memorize this, is what every single boat weighs. So I think it's just a matter of time until they have to figure out, okay, yes, sit on tops, standing on the sit on tops, that's really working for this market because they're accustomed to standing on the deck of a bass boat. But how are we going to make that next integrated step into something that's lighter?
Oh, yeah.
Like the Native Ultimate FX is probably the only flat water boat that I would buy right now, just for who I am, because I spend so little time out there. But like, I think that's, if I were fishing, that's totally the boat I would go into. You know, it's lighter. There's no frills. So I'm wondering if something like that, it's more utilitarian and less tracks and stuff everywhere.
You know, they've branched out in materials. That's really one of the only ways. You got to have a boat that has so much volume. It's got to be so wide. It's got to be so long. You get the tracking out of it. You get the stability out of it. The only other way that they're going to cut weight that I foresee is in materials, what that boat's built out of. And we've seen some boats like Hurricane's Skimmer series, Native's Slayer 12LT, Jackson's Kilroy that was offered in ABS plastics. All those boats are offered in ABS plastics, which does reduce the weight by 10, maybe at max 15 pounds. But it'll be interesting to see. I think that is, and any of you manufacturers out there, designers out there, I think that's kind of the next thing we're waiting to see. I just had a kayak fisherman in over the weekend, and he seemed to think that that'll be the next step for the fishing industry. Carbon fiber or composite, sit on top.
Man, can you imagine? I mean, it's bad enough, and that's kind of my point. It's like, it's bad enough these guys have to buy trailers, and like, I don't understand how some of these dudes don't throw their backs out.
75 pounds doesn't sound heavy, but when you're lifting it up over your head and putting it on your nice SUV, and it comes off and shears off the rearview mirror.
Well, and when 75 pounds has 12 feet of leverage.
Exactly. It's awkward weight.
But I don't know. I mean, Radisson figured it out, right? They took your classic, clunky, annoying, heavy aluminum canoe that I grew up with, and they turned it into something light and totally usable and super safe by going thin on the material and adding foam.
And that was my response to the gentleman, the customer who brought that up, is like, well, we sell Swift, and here's a pack 13.6, which would fit you perfectly. That boat weighs 24, 26 pounds.
Right.
Okay, and you can fish out of it. Can you stand up in it? I would try with warm water around me.
Yeah.
But no, it's not made for standing up, right? So there are composite lightweight options out there. Are they designed and built for fishing? No. Can they be used for fishing? Yes. I've got a good friend who used to work for the shop, Ben Rogers, who's out in Idaho, and I believe he's got a pack 13.6 from Swift. Again, that 26-pound pack boat that he fly fishes out of, catches some monster trout with.
Well, and people have been standing up and fly fishing in canoes for decades. That's not new.
But this is a pack boat, though, so this is a boat you're sitting in.
Right, and it's so much smaller, too, because pack boats are usually quite short. Yeah. I am still, I know I'm the only one, but I'm still pushing for the rebirth of the Adirondack guide boat. I think that would be super cool.
It would be super cool. Again, it's so niche.
I know, but it's light. You can stand in it. You can bring a family of 5 in it. I mean, they used to have church in the middle of the lake, standing and kneeling in guide boats.
I'm what's cool about guide boats is their history.
Yeah,
there is something to be said about it. As far as weight's concerned, I know David Yost, DY from Swift Canoe and Kayak. I know he was working on a composite guide boat. I don't know where that stands these days. I don't know if that was something they continued to look into building. I know I believe he had a mold or he had a prototype. He had a prototype.
I think I asked him. That's what he said.
Built.
Yeah.
Especially here in the Adirondacks, that would do fairly well. Now there are some folks out there that are building lightweight guide boats over in Vermont.
Yeah.
Now, again, though, can they be built lighter? I think so, but I think, again, we're just not seeing as much demand in that category.
I think that as more of these guys are getting into kayak fishing and getting more accustomed to the idea of because I mean the trend in fishing has been standing in the boat for, and that's been where all the energy has been, and I think once people realize like, hey, you can sit, and like the real advantage for me from my time kayak fishing was the quietness and the ability to sneak in there.
Get you some shallow water.
Right, and I could flip and pitch and do all that stuff and flip at docks and everything. I just had to figure out how to do it with a side flick instead of a vertical. Mm-hmm. I feel like as guys figure out that like sitting's not the end of the world, it's actually extremely pleasant. There'll be less focus on standing, more focus on sitting, and if that's the case, we can start to shrink these boats back down again. So maybe it's a social, and this is somewhere where the ambassadors, the sponsored guys, might be able to drive the market that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that would really help seal the deal and the longevity of and growth in that niche.
I mean, let's face it. Again, you can fish out of any kayak.
Anything, yeah.
However, there are some that are built and more designed for specifically kayak fishing, standing, sitting, whatever it might be. But
yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the more specialized you make it, the more value you've added to the product, and the more likely they are to buy that over a Pungo Angler Edition. Yeah.
Right. So to your original question, SUP. Some say SUP is dead. I don't think SUP is always going to be around. I don't think that the market will see as many units sold. I think we'll continue to see those major players, BIC, Surf Tech, Boardworks. We'll continue to see those peripheral guys that were just trying to get a piece of the pie. We'll see them disappear, and we'll see the guys who've been doing it for a long time and that are spending and investing the money into making these new products. We'll continue to see those sales, but it's past its prime, its growth period for sure. It's going to settle in for a bit. Kayak fishing, yeah, we'll continue to see that grow for the next couple of years, especially here in the Northeast. I think there's still a lot of room for growth up here, but even then, while there will be more secondhand products being sold on the market, that too will kind of settle down at some point here in the near future. But it's always going to be around. Yeah, SUP's always going to be around. Kayak fishing's always going to be around. The new thing that's been kind of interesting watching transpire are these pontoon style, captain chair pontoon style fishing rigs like the
abominations.
Blue Sky 360.
They are abominations.
Oh, you can't.
I can't even begin.
You can't say that.
How long did it take you to get rid of those bicycle pontoon things? I remember you being fired up to get rid of them. Too long. Way too long. Right. So what's the difference?
We got rid of the Blue Sky Boatworks in a few months.
Yeah, I think that both of them fall in the same trend. Or all three of these things fall in the same trend, right? Where you're going to see them come out, initial interest, decline, plateau. Yeah. Right? And what you don't want to do is get caught here with all that inventory, right, and then...
It's from what I've learned is you have to be, when it's a more niche-y product like that, you have to be as conservative as you can. But that's the thing in business. Sometimes something might appear to be niche-y, and then it may blow up, and then all of a sudden you brought in one or two, and now you've lost 4, 5, 6, 10 different sales, right, because you only brought in one or two.
Can't sell it if you don't have it. Yeah.
Can't sell if you don't have it. But no, that'll be interesting to see that grow, because Blue Sky Boatworks isn't the only company with one of these catamaran style boats.
Yeah, I've heard there are more coming out.
There's a couple more coming out, so we'll continue to kind of keep an eye on that. Having paddled that product myself, it was fun for a dad with 2 young kids wanting to fish. Comfy chair, comfy captain's chair, super stable when you have the drain plugs in. It's a story for another time. I'll tell it now.
I can imagine.
So I have this customer who comes and wants to test paddle the Blue Sky Boatworks. We go down to the dock. My staff take it down there for me. Oh, well, we moved it down there for you. It's ready to go. So I walk the customer down there. We go down. I put it in. Oh, yeah, this thing is super stable, super comfortable. I get on it, and as I'm kind of showing him all the features, it's getting really tippy, way less stable than I thought.
The world starts turning left.
By the time I got off, I was barely standing up. It was barely flipping over. And we realized the staff brought it down with both drain plugs open. So those big pontoons, of course, weigh 10 times what they normally weigh,
right,
full of water.
Right.
And yeah, long story short,
Now it's a nightmare.
don't forget about your drain plugs.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember when we had the original prototype Attack come up, and we were demoing that at Paddlefest. And there was they were still dialing in like where the thin spots on the hull were, and it was like super popular, but every time we had to like bail it out because it had cracked.
It cracked. It was taking a while.
So it's like, I swear they don't all do this.
Yeah, that makes for a very awkward conversation with the customer when it's a prototype or something's not working right. Yeah.
Yeah. Good news. This is the only place you're going to see it.
Yeah.
Bad news.
Yeah. This is a very stable boat when you put the drain plugs in, I promise.
I swear. Yeah. Make your entire impression in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Please don't go to the other side of the lake.
At any rate, no, we're looking forward to a great spring. Fishing sales have already kicked off. We'll hope to see more of that, and see increase in that as we get closer and closer to Paddlefest in May. And paddle boards, we'll continue to sell them. I love them. I use them.
I'm curious. I'm always willing to be proven wrong if it means everything's moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys.
Cheers.